Good evening, sports fans, and welcome to Any Given Sunday. And this is Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, with my brother with another mother, Mr. Coach 24, Darwin Penny. How are you doing tonight, sir?
We're doing well, Brian. Thank you for being able to do this show again. And so looking forward to all that it will entail.
Awesome. That is great. I am looking forward to it, and I'm enjoying the fact that we get to do our show and we get to do it in a radio. So, speaking of that, our producer for tonight's show is Mr. DJ Scatter, George Walker. How are you doing tonight, Mr. Walker?
I'm doing just fine,
Just fine. Now, people, I am trying to get my computer going. I am the least technical technology sound person that you'll ever meet. So I am trying to get it going, and so we are on there. So if people are going to look for us, people are on there. I can't get it on my phone, so I will check that out and do that in the meantime. But right now we're going to talk some sports, and right now we are literally 1 week away from the NFL season. And yes, they say that there's preseason and all that. Technically, it is not the NFL season until next Thursday, when the Buffalo Bills go to SoFi Field and play the Los Angeles Rams, the defending champs, Los Angeles Rams. So I am definitely looking forward to that. And they are trying to get it to where we are having the season set up to where the Super Bowl will be on the day before President's Day. So that way everybody can get off on President's Day, which I know there'll still be people that will work, like Quick Trip people and DoorDash people and all those. But saying that, how are you anticipating this season?
We're looking forward to another great season. The NFL has really found a way to capture the hearts of the fans by the way they have a great formula set up, created divisional and regional rivalries with that. And so it is a time, because it's one day a week, it doesn't have the long grind that baseball and basketball have, where you're playing multiple games a week. And so everybody can kind of start a crescendo beginning on Monday and it captivating on Sunday or Monday, or even when we have our Thursday night games. And so it should be an exciting season. We haven't had a repeat champion in a while, so we're looking forward to it. And so I think it ought to be a great season.
That's great. So now, saying that, there are some headlines. One was headed by Mr. Tom Brady, debating on whether he was taking a vacation during the during training camp, which totally just perplexed me. But as for you being a professional baseball player, when you have spring training, now for this it's the football, so it'd be spring training camp. What goes into your mindset when you have, and Tom Brady is considered the greatest quarterback ever. He's won more Super Bowls than anybody. He's probably won more games than anybody. But saying that, his off-season tirades, him taking off, how does that affect a team?
I think it affects a team tremendously when you are questioning what is his level of commitment. Obviously, at the beginning of the offseason, he said he was retired. Then he unretired and decided to come back. But in the reality of it, most players will tell you as they age and mature when it comes to preseason, training camp, things like that, they know what it takes for them to get ready for a season. And so if they could avoid that, they probably would, except for getting just enough game reps or high-intensity practice reps, especially today's NFL where you get to have these joint practices with other teams. That's what he knows what he needs to get ready. At the end of the day, the guys that have been in the locker room with him know that once that whistle blows, this guy's going to be ready and he's going to perform at a high level. The challenge is always when you're dealing with so many egos in a locker room, why does one person get to do something that other people don't get to do? Case in point, back in the many years ago when the Astros would only have Roger Clemens pitch at home games, right? So there's preferential treatment that goes along. And people say everybody's got to be the same on a team. I disagree with that. Well, guys, you may have a certain set of rules that are the same for everybody, but the fact that they put a red jersey on you says you get preferential treatment as a quarterback. And so
Right.
a guy who has as many accomplishments as he has, I think he should get the benefit of the doubt. The challenge is dealing with a new coach who may say, hey, this is the way I want to run this ship, because more than anything else, when your guy who's your best player is also your hardest working player, it's what make the team go, right? It was the thing that allowed him to be so successful in New England. But we have to look at now we're dealing with a 45-year-old quarterback. And so he wants to pace himself. It's a long season. We've added another game. And all those things that goes along with it, I think he probably is a little bit mentally challenged. He's probably also dealing with some pull and some resistance at home because you told us you were going to be home. And the kids are getting older, and we want you to be able to spend time for them. But at the end of the day, he hadn't gotten that competitive edge out of his system. And until he gets that competitive edge out of the system, I think he's going to try to continue to play. He threw more passes than anybody else last year, and so he still feels like he can play.
And I totally agree with that. But the other thing is yes, he's 45 years old. He is arguably the oldest player ever to play. Yes, George Blanda played, but that was in a totally different time frame. This was in the 60s, early 70s. You have players that need to get acclimated with the quarterback, and if he is going to be your starting quarterback and then he doesn't show up until the regular season, how does that affect the wide receivers? And let me use an example. Let's say Patrick Mahomes done the exact same thing. Now, Patrick Mahomes is the leader, as Tom Brady is for Tampa Bay. And he decides that he's got some family issues, or he's going to go on a vacation, or he's going to take off. How does that affect, because Tyreek Hill left and you brought in, 3 new wide receivers? You drafted one, you brought in 2 new wide receivers, and you need to get acclimated with each other in rhythm and sync and everything else. And if your quarterback, your leader, is not there, how does that affect the season?
Certainly it would affect timing, but if you go back and you look, as soon as Tom made his decision to come back, he's always had his own personal mini camps with his receivers. He's flown to their respective hometowns. He's had them come to his place, put them up himself so that they could get that timing. The only person he's really losing from his receiving corps is Gronkowski. The main 3 receivers are all back. As far as that's concerned, the biggest challenge he has is he's got 2 new starters on the offensive line, and then he's got a guy that's going to be out for a significant amount of time. And those guys need to be able to hear his voice with the calls, things like that. But I believe he believes that I can get those guys up to speed, right? All you need to do is hear me call pass protection, slide right, slide left, know where that backer is coming from. I think he has the rapport with the receivers that are his main guys. And I think with the amount of time that they have also between the last preseason game and the first regular season game, I think he feels pretty confident about it. And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt of his track record is that Tom Brady has never left a stone unturned, and he's always had great rapport when he's had lesser receivers, much less the guys of the caliber that he has in Tampa Bay now.
Okay, saying that, they have been, I think they've won the last 2 NFC South titles, both of them because of him. What is Tampa Bay's chances of three-peating?
The biggest thing I think for them is not going to be what they're going to be able to do offensively, because he can always make adjustments at the line. He's so cerebral. He's done this for so long, over 21 years, that he's been able to do that. That's not going to be the issue. If they can have somebody be somewhat competent in the running game, and he's going to be able to get the ball out of his hand real easy. The question is, will their defense get back to the level that they were in 2020 when they did win the Super Bowl? And I think they have made some adjustments defensively that will allow them to be successful. I think the biggest challenge is going to be one of the things that we continue to talk about is how is the team as a whole going to respond to Todd Bowles versus B.A. B.A. was more of a player's coach. Will they have this same type of rapport with Todd Bowles? Certainly it's one thing to be a part of the staff, but it's different when you're wearing the big headphones, so to speak.
Right.
And I think that will be one of the challenges is how they will respond to him. How will he respond when after a loss? You know, will he trust them as a veteran team, or will he insert himself into pushing them a little bit harder? And so that's going to always be the key, is what you're able to get your guys to perform as a head coach.
Well, and with him being a defensive coordinator, will that help benefit the defense, or will that hinder the defense? Because now he can't totally focus on the defense. He's got to focus on the offense, the defense, and the special teams.
A lot of it's going to depend on how he sets up his coaching staff. Is he going to allow the defensive coordinator to truly be that and just be that sounding board for them, and he spend more time managing the game, managing the clock? I know as a guy who, when I was a high school coach, I cut my teeth on the defensive side of the ball. I tried to trust my offensive guys and allow them to do things. If I wanted to call a play in a certain time, I would. But if I was him, my offense would not be as a big of an issue for me because of the veteran I have at quarterback, who's been there, he's done that, he's seen it all. He understands defense. He understands how to change and make adjustments. He understands how to bring that to the sideline and say, this is what we're seeing out here. Here are some things that'll work. And what you do in your pregame prep, what do you do all week getting yourself ready and getting your game plan together. With a veteran quarterback, it's a lot easier. And I think that he has to, for me, be good at what you're good at. And that is making sure that your defense is top-notch.
Absolutely. So, so you've got them winning the NFC South.
When I look at the South, the question I ask is, who's going to unseat them? Okay, will it be Carolina? I don't think so. They're just still transitioning, and how are they going to respond with Baker Mayfield now being the number one? The Saints still are trying to find themselves post Sean Payton, okay, and then Atlanta is still at least 2 years away.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't see them not winning the NFC South unless there is a significant injury, namely Brady.
Gotcha. So the thing that, and I totally agree with you. I think Tampa Bay will win the division. And it does depend on the Saints, because Carolina, even with Baker Mayfield, is not Carolina does not want him to be the Cleveland quarterback. They want him to be the Carolina quarterback, which means he can't do all those immature acts that he did while he was in Carolina. They are relying on him to run the team, to be a professional, and to be actually an so-called a Brady type player, an older quarterback, older mature quarterback that knows how to run the system than what he did in Cleveland. Because Cleveland, he did do some things that were great, but he also did them off the seat of his pants. And I know Carolina and Matt Rule does not want them to do that. And you're right, Atlanta, you've got Mariota as a quarterback. This is a prove-it year for Mariota, because he hasn't started in a couple of years. He's been backing up Tannehill in Tennessee. I don't see that. Now the Saints, it depends on if they can continue on beating Tampa Bay like they have. I mean, Tampa Bay was just motoring through their division and everything, but always seemed to have trouble with the Saints. If they still have that issue, I think the Saints could possibly overtake them, but it's still a long shot to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, at the end of the day, when we look at divisions in today's modern NFL, the first thing you look at is who has the best quarterback in the division. Most of the time, if you got the best quarterback in the division, you wind up winning the division. There's obviously been some outliers there, but I think if we were to line up each division and say who's got the best quarterback in a quarterback-driven league, we find our champion. And if there's two quarterbacks that I would say equal, who has the better year, usually winds up winning the division. And so when you look at that NFC South, who's better than Brady?
Nobody. So let's stick with the NFC, and let's do the NFC East. So, and we were just talking about quarterbacks and how it is. You know, Dallas is the favorite, even though the Eagles succeeded better than the Cowboys did in the playoffs. Dak Prescott is still a much better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts is improving, and then you've got Carson Wentz for the Commanders, which, ironically, if you see my jersey, I am wearing a Doug Williams jersey, and we can talk a little bit about that, why I have that jersey on and everything. And then you've got the Giants, and the Giants are a mess. Their number one draft pick, who is supposed to be a savior on the defense, is out 4 to 6 weeks. So they've lost him. They've got Daniel Jones, who they can't trust for anything. So you don't know what's going on with them. And, so if they win 4 games, they're lucky. So what would it take for somebody to take over Dallas in that division?
Well, I think some of the things have already started. Injuries is a big part of the game. Dallas losing Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith is the left tackle, probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And so you can look at Dak's respective numbers when Tyron is in the game versus when Tyron's out of the game. Dak's quarterback rating is like over 105 when Tyron's on the field. When Tyron is not on the field, it's about 94. So what we see is a guy who plays above average with Tyron Smith in there and plays below average when or right around average when Tyron Smith is out. And so that's a big deal. He's also lost receivers over this past year, and you got a couple of receivers that are hurt that won't be back. James Washington, who they acquired in the offseason via the Steelers, and then also Michael Gallup is going to probably be out the first 4 to 5 games at least. And so they're planning on CeeDee Lamb taking over the role that Amari Cooper had for the last 3 to 4 years as being that number one receiver. Certainly CeeDee Lamb has shown flashes, but can he get the consistency? When you are now the number one guy, you're going to draw the number one corner, things like that. And so they're still trying to find out who's going to be their number two in the time being, and then what are they going to be able to do with their makeshift line. They're going to wind up starting a rookie at left tackle, and that's got to be an anxious moment for Dak, right? Because all of your calls got to be right, and this guy's got to pick up all those calls and be able to slide. And so with 2 new starters on their offensive line, I think it's going to create some problems. The Eagles improved during the offseason. They've shored up their defense a little bit. The back end of their defense was really suspect last year, and so they do that. You'd like to think that Jalen Hurts is going to get a little bit better. Question is, will they be able to mix in a little bit of a running game? We know Dallas can mix in a running game with Zeke and Tony Pollard, and so will they be able to do that? I think Washington is just searching to see who can one day be that quarterback. Here's what we know about Carson Wentz. There's going to be days that he looks really good, and then there's going to be days that he looks awful. There's a reason why the Colts allowed him to go. And so I think there's still some maturity issues there with him, and so he's got to continue to grow. I would say that they would not be the team that I would say would be the favorite or the dark horse even in that league. I think the reason they don't finish last is because the Giants are inept. The Giants are inept at the quarterback position. They're inept, still trying to figure out who's going to be their coach and who's going to lead them. And so the real challenge is for Dallas to be consistent and to go beyond the first round in the playoffs. They can't have another first-round exit, and you cannot have Mike McCarthy doing bad time clock management like he did last year. Probably cost them 3 or 4 games and even the playoff game. And so they've got to be able to do that. But as I've always said about my favorite team, they won't win again until Jerry dies.
Yep, absolutely. So saying that, how much of a hot seat is McCarthy in?
I think he's on a really, really hot seat because looming in the background, whether people may or may not believe it, is Sean Payton. Sean Payton has always wanted to coach the Cowboys, but he could not pass up the opportunity to go to New Orleans when that was made available to him. It was always Bill Parcells' hope that Sean Payton would stay with him, and once he retired, that Sean would be the guy. And so he's always kept a home in Dallas. His children have gone to school in Dallas, and so he can be away from the league for about 2 years. And if McCarthy doesn't do a great job this year, I could see Jerry making a splash and bringing Sean Payton his. He's already extended McCarthy. That's what they do to NFL coaches, but to a team that's worth more than $5 billion, paying Mike McCarthy out won't be so I think his seat is not only hot, but it's flaming.
So what would it take for him to keep his job outside of winning the Super Bowl or being in the Super Bowl?
Being in the Super Bowl, I think if they even got to an NFC championship game, I think that would secure his job for at least another year. But anything resemblance of last year, of going out in the first round, and it was the way they went out in the first round, or just losing the locker room. If he at any time loses the locker room this year, let's say they get on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, I think Jerry will pull the cord early, allow one of the other coaches to just finish out the season and then come back with somebody else. And like I say, that name that I'll throw out will be Sean Payton.
Yeah. So we've got 2 of the divisions in the NFC. So now let's go to the NFC West, which I think it's the toughest division in the NFC. Saying that, I still think it's all the Rams. I think San Francisco is totally overrated. A lot of people are talking about, it's Trey Lance's team, but they just signed Garofalo to a contract, which made him the highest backup quarterback in the league. Does that should put a lot of pressure on Trey Lance, because the second that he starts losing games or his performance is not going to do well, they're going to put in Garofalo, and then that team is going to go downhill.
Absolutely. I think the West is a very, very tough division. The Rams obviously have a lot of guys coming back. They're going to have to make an adjustment at left tackle with retirement. They've got really good skill positions. It's a lot easier on Matt Stafford there than it was in Detroit. What San Francisco does is they get you into their style of game, and when they can slow the ball down and they can pound you and keep your offense off the field, it becomes their biggest weapon, and being able to utilize Devo. I think more so than anything, they just didn't want anybody else to get Garoppolo, right? Unless they could get a boatload for him. And so I don't think there was as big a market as they had hoped. Everybody was sitting back hoping that they just release Garoppolo and we'll just take him off the street.
Right.
But they made the commitment to Trey Lance, and he's going to be their guy. But I do think if the season is in question, if the playoffs are in question, that they will pull the ripcord, so to speak, on him. Shanahan has not been known to have a whole lot of patience with quarterbacks, so I think he'll quickly make that decision. But if he makes that decision, I don't think he'll ever get Trey Lance back, right? Because that's the thing you got to be able to do, is you got to be able to stick with a quarterback and allow them to grow and allow them to make mistakes. You've committed to him, then be committed to him. Arizona is intriguing because they can do so many things well. They play just well enough on defense. They can be exciting at times on offense. The biggest challenge is always going to be Kyler Murray down the stretch. A small frame quarterback tends to get hurt, and every year down the stretch he's been nicked up and he hadn't played. If you look at his stats tend to fall off the last quarter of the season just because he gets so banged up. And so, but I think they are still a viable option. It wouldn't surprise me for them to be in second place or first place in that division. They were hot out of the box. The question is, can you keep Kyler Murray upright for a long enough time? With that, then I think those are really the three teams. Yes, they're, Seattle. I just think it's a tank this year, right, and try to get them a quarterback for next year, and so that's where they are. But yeah, that's what makes that a tough division. Is the top three are really, really good, and without a doubt the best division in the NFC.
And then, so we're going to hitting the break in a few more minutes. So we're going to talk about the NFC North. Who can beat Green Bay? Now, saying that, Green Bay is not the same. Just like Mahomes doesn't have Tyreek Hill, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have Devontae Adams, and I really think that they are going to struggle more than what the Chiefs will, based on that acclimate right there. So saying that, who do you think could beat the Green Bay Packers? Because the Green Bay is still the team to beat in that division.
If I was going to pick a team, the team that I would think could unseat them would be the Vikings. The Vikings still have enough offensive firepower. Got a Dalvin Cook, Jefferson, and the other receiver are really, really good. So
Thielen,
Adam Thielen, he was all banged up last year. He couldn't ever stay healthy last year, but we know what he did the previous 2 to 3 years. The question is always, are you going to trust the quarterback? Right. Are you going to trust him? And so the Bears, we'll see how they move forward with their quarterback situation. But for me, Chicago just does not have enough weapons to compete. So it's still, we go back to what we started with, right? Who's got the best quarterback in the division? There's no question Aaron Rodgers is. Well, can he make those non-Devontae Adams receivers? Because there was a time that nobody knew who Devontae Adams was either.
Exactly.
So can he do that with Scanling and some of these other guys? But here's the other thing that I think that they have better than anybody else is they got the best running back in the division. And I know Dalvin Cook is probably a better runner, but Aaron Jones is a more complete back to me. And I think he's going to probably get leaned on a little bit more this year. And give the Packers that advantage that they've always have, certainly still playing in Lambeau. Lambeau is not what it once was. It used to be Death Valley. If you went up there, you just automatically put an L. But we've seen teams in the playoffs, not in the regular season, we've seen teams in the playoffs go up there and beat. But part of that has been because Rodgers hadn't played well down the stretch in some of those big NFC division and championship games.
Absolutely. So we're going to head off for halftime. This is our first day back. So I know that I am struggling a little bit. I am happy. I'm enjoying it. But we'll get it going. And when we come back, we will talk about the AFC. And we will talk about the Chiefs. Are they going to be the team to beat, or will there be another team in that tough AFC West division overtaking them? We will be back. This is Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice, with Coach 24 Darwin Penny and George Walker. And this is Any Given Sunday. And you're talking on KUAW. All right, we are back. Any given Sunday. I'm sorry about that. KUAW, and I am the awesome voice, and obviously you know that's why I'm the awesome voice, because I got a big mouth. Anyway, KUAW, Brian Kress, the awesome voice, Coach 24, Darwin Penny, and George Walker running the controls. 816-599-6893 is the phone number. If you guys are listening and you guys want to call in, you got any questions or make a comment, please do. We will take all your phone calls. So now we're getting into, we just talked about the NFC, so let's get into the AFC, and let's get into the toughest division in football, and that is the AFC West. And you've got the Chiefs, and you've got the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. And I will say this, if the Broncos were playing in any other division this year, they would have a shot at winning the division. But I just can't see them winning the division this year. Even after Russell Wilson just signed a $245 million contract that put him as the second highest paying quarterback in the league. I just can't see them doing that. Saying that, it is still the Chiefs to lose.
Absolutely. We still talk about it. What we've been saying all along, who has the best quarterback in the division? Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the division. Certainly this is a loaded division when we talk about quarterbacks. We're talking about Justin Herbert at the Chargers. I think seriously underrated Derek Carr with the Raiders. People don't give him as much credit, but he's really settled in and become a solid NFL quarterback over the last 3 or 4 years. And then obviously the Broncos made the splash decision bringing in Russell to lead them, and certainly have paid him handsomely to be that guy. I still hesitate a little bit because he's a little bit older, right? He's the oldest quarterback in the division, by probably 3 or 4 years over Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And so I think the question is not going to be whose quarterback is going to play well, because I think they're all going to play well. The question is going to be who in this division is going to have the best defense. Now, we've talked a ton about offense and quarterbacks and receivers and everything else, but I think in this division, you're going to have to be the team that can get a stop when you need it. So is that the Chiefs? Is that the Chargers? Is that the Broncos? Is that the Raiders? If I was going to bet, I would bet on the Chiefs because of their pass rush more than anything else. I think they can still get to the quarterback better than everybody else can in the division, with probably San Diego is going to be resting. If Voce is healthy the whole year, then I think San Diego is going to provide Kansas City with all that they can handle this year. But with that said, the question really out of this division is, will it have 2 or 3 representatives in the AFC playoffs?
Oh, I still believe that there will be 3 teams. I think the Chiefs will win the division, and then I have the Chargers, Raiders, and then Broncos. And I do think that both of them will be in there. Now, saying that, the Chargers, it's going to depend on the coaching. This is I will say out of, you've got 2 new coaches, and then you've got a second-year head coach. So, I mean, how can you not pick against Andy Reid? So you've got the best quarterback in the division, and you got the best coach in the division. Arguably, you got the best coach in the NFL right now. So saying that they will win, if Brandon Staley can stop making those bad calls. Now I can get that he was making tough calls, gutsy calls, but when he kept making them over and over and wasn't succeeding on them, you got to learn to stop at some point, because it is not working. So if he can control that a little bit, then I've got the Chargers going second. I am not a big Josh McDaniels fan at all. I think he's lived on the coattails of Bill Belichick, because as soon as he went to Denver, he didn't coach very well. And they did have a decent team. Now, maybe not the best team, but I do know that they have a better team in Vegas than he did in Denver. So if he cannot lead the Vegas Raiders to a playoff bound, then he needs to go anyway. So saying that, I have the Chiefs in the toughest division, and with the others. Now, let's go to the AFC North division, where last year Cincinnati surprised everybody. And if anybody said, "Oh yeah, Cincinnati is going to the Super Bowl," I will question in your truth in believing that. Now, saying that, they can't hide from anybody now. They are wanted, but you still have Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has the best coach in that division in Mike Tomlin. And even if you don't have Ben Roethlisberger anymore, and you've got a rookie quarterback, and you got Mitch Trubisky, who was drafted higher than Patrick Mahomes in the 2017 draft, you still have Mike Tomlin, who I know is one of the top 3 coaches in this league. And then you've got John Harbaugh, who's close behind him, and you've got right now a healthy Lamar Jackson. So who do you have in this division?
I have the Bengals as well. One reason I have the Bengals, obviously I think Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the division. The Steelers are going to be finally transitioning from Big Ben. We'll see how Lamar can play with contract issues still hanging out there. Every quarterback wants to get paid. But I think one of the other things that we have to look at is how the schedule is set up. And so Cincinnati, for me, has a very, very favorable schedule when you look at after their first 2 weeks, based on what we think teams are going to do, right? They're going to have the traditional division rivalry. They're going to play the Steelers week 1, opening up. And then they've got to go to Dallas, who we think could also be a playoff team. But then the schedule, I think, is a lot favorable for them, playing the Jets and the Dolphins at home. They've also got the Falcons. When you look at that, they got the Panthers, so they have the NFC South. I think those are things that favor them. Now, how can they respond down the stretch? Because back-to-back weeks they're going to play at Tennessee, and then the next week they'll have the Chiefs at home. And so I think that. And then the last 3 weeks, they play week 15, they're at Tampa. Week 16, they're at New England, and then they finish out week 17 with the Bills at home. So their schedule is we're going to find out what they're really made of, but they're going to have to do really well in division and then do really well against the NFC South to try to pile up some wins, because they've got some other AFC games that, when you talk about the Bills and the Chiefs, you got to be able to split with those two. You can't afford to lose both of those, because if you do, obviously, you lose home field advantage. And the Titans as well. Certainly, I believe the Titans, we'll get to them later, will be better with Derrick Henry back.
Gotcha. So you have Cincinnati winning the division?
I got Cincinnati.
I'm gonna pick Baltimore. I'm gonna trust Lamar Jackson. He supposedly has asked for a contract by the start of next week, but I seriously doubt it would happen. But in the NFL, who knows? I think it'll be Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and then Cleveland is the mess. They will be the worst team in the AFC. I think the Jets will even be better than Cleveland. So I've got Baltimore. Now, speaking of the South, we were talking about Tennessee having the number 1 seed, and everybody seems to forget about that they were the number 1 seed last year, because right now they're not really talking very well about it. You've got Tennessee, and then you've got Indianapolis, who got rid of Carson Wentz, who I think was roughly 75-80% the reason why the Indianapolis Colts did not make the playoffs last year. So you've got Matty Ryan, who has made it to a Super Bowl, but I still don't think he was that great of a quarterback. And then you've got Jacksonville and you've got Houston rounding up. Now, I think Jacksonville will improve, but that's only like a couple of games. Saying that, I've got Indianapolis winning the division. What do you have?
I would say I still believe Tennessee is the team to beat. because they are better defensively. The question for Indianapolis is, will they be able to lean on Taylor for their running game? I think this is going to be one of those divisions where it's not. It's one of the few divisions where we're going to say, well, it's not going to probably be about the quarterback, but it's going to be about the running game and defense. Tennessee, Vrabel always has them playing well defensively. And then, again, like I said earlier, with Derrick Henry, we assume going to be back to full strength and be able to play. He was a big reason why they got off to the good start and why they were able to control. Tannehill with no running game is a below-average quarterback, bar none, right? And so we'll see where he is on that. The thing that helped Carson Wentz be successful last year in Indianapolis was them being able to lean on their running back Taylor, who led the league in rushing. And so to me, that's big. They were pretty good on the back end defensively. They still have some needs to address at linebacker, and they got an okay pass rush. So I think those are the things that are going to be really, really key over there. Jacksonville, as you said, they're not ready. I think a good year for them would be 5 or 6 wins if they could do that. The biggest thing they've got to do is make sure that Trevor Lawrence continues to progress as a quarterback. If he goes backwards, then that kid will probably lose his confidence. And then I don't know what to say about Houston, right? They can win preseason games with the best of them, but I think there's still some dysfunction there. As a whole, the only time for me that Houston's been good is when Indianapolis didn't have their quarterbacks, and Houston would always seem to win the division then. And so when Peyton was hurt, or when they were transitioning to Andrew Luck, or whenever he was hurt, and so I think those are the real keys to that division.
So, saying that, and usually this is the rare division where you usually say the best quarterback. But who is the best quarterback in that division?
Well, at this point, I would have to go with Matt Ryan, right? He's proven that he's been more consistent over his career than Tannehill. We know he's put up tremendous numbers when he had healthy receivers like Julio Jones. He did take a team to a Super Bowl, and so I just think his best days are behind him. The question is his best days being behind him still better than Ryan Tannehill, right? And all I'll say about this is Tannehill's going to look, I'll say it, he's going to look good until Derrick Henry is not effective. And then we saw that in the playoffs last year. He could not make a play when he needed to make a play because there was no threat of the running game. And so even when Derrick Henry tried to come back, we know he was a shell of himself because he was still injured trying to play.
Saying that, now he had a foot injury, and that is not good for a running back to have a lower body injury. With the big body that he is, because he's a big man, will that affect him having more injuries?
Well, you always assume that it could. If he was more of a one-cut, two-cut, juke back, I would say it would affect him. But Derrick Henry gets downhill, and he's power and really, really deceptive speed. People don't realize how fast it is till he starts running 99-yard touchdowns, and he's also arm slamming guys along the way. And
right.
So. But the question is, can he continue to move the chains? And I think he can move the chains for them. If I was them, I'd be trying to find who could be my change of pace back to go along with him, a complimentary back, just because history has said that if backs get more than 400 touches in a year, they start that decline. And what you don't want to do to Derrick Henry, because he's a bigger back, he's going to take a bit more licks than the average small back, is basically what happened to Earl Campbell years ago. Okay, they ran him hard for about 4 years, and then all of a sudden the wagon couldn't pull, anymore. And so those are the things that you worry about Derrick Henry. But I don't think the foot injury is as big to him as it would be to some other backs in the league who rely heavily on their cut. He can get downhill, he can get his pad level below yours and just run you over. I mean, most people, if they saw Derrick Henry, would think he's either a defensive end, or outside linebacker, big middle linebacker or something. He doesn't look like your average running back.
Yeah, I get that. Now, saying that, he is approaching 32, so that is also a downside. Now, the AFC East, you've got Buffalo, and a lot of people are saying that Buffalo is going to finally pull through. They're going to not only make it to the Super Bowl, but they are going to finally raise the Lombardi Trophy. That is not the issue. And you've got Josh Allen, who is the best quarterback in that division. But how effective will New England be? And how much of a I know that Miami picked up a lot of players, including Tyreek Hill. How much is that going to benefit them this year?
I think Miami will be. I think they will surpass New England and being the contender in the division. Right? I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's Buffalo's division to lose. Top to bottom, they're a better team. We talked about it earlier. Who has the better coach? Well, we feel like they have the better coach as well. And so the question will be, can Miami turn it into a 1 or 2 game race late in the season where they can have a head-to-head matchup? What Miami will have, I think, can they generate enough speed, because Buffalo is one of the faster defenses in the league. Can they generate enough speed? And can they create space for Tyreek and their other receivers to be able to be successful, because Buffalo is a press corner defense, and they like to get up in your face. And can Tua get the ball down the field? Can he really drive the ball down the field? We know he'll be able to do it early in the season because the weather will be favorable late in the season. Having to go to a Buffalo, having to go to a New England, where the weather is not your friend and the wind is blowing, he does not have elite arm talent, elite arm strength. He has accuracy. And so if we can now take away your short pass, where are you going to be able to beat us at? And there's nothing that says to me that they're going to be able to out-defense Buffalo. And so I do think that this is Buffalo's window. This is your window. Right. You've knocked on the door. We saw one of the best playoff games we've ever seen when they played the Chiefs here last year. I mean, it was just an unbelievable game. And so they've knocked on the door. They've banged on the door. Can you now enter into the door and make it your league? And I'm not talking just about the AFC, your conference, but your league. And this is their window before they start having financial issues and all those other things that go along with once you start winning, everybody wants more money.
Right, exactly. Now, saying that, Tre'Davious White, their best cornerback, will still not be playing for the first 4 weeks at least. Does that help them to get him back after 5 weeks, or is that going to hurt them in the beginning of the season?
I think it's going to be a help to them once they get him back. I think they'll be able to also grow their defense by having somebody else play there that then can become one of your nickel guys. I think they will play a little bit more zone as a result of not having him out there. Smart coaches figure out ways to make some adjustments until you get that guy back. But that team is still going to revolve around what they can do with Josh Allen and him being able to make plays not only with his arms but with his legs. If they can improve just a little bit more in their running game so that they don't get into a state of predictability, again, I not only say that they are the team to beat in the AFC East, but they are the team to beat in the AFC.
Gotcha. So you guys heard our predictions, who we think are going to win each division. Next Thursday, the opening night of NFL, we will let you guys know who we do pick to go to the Super Bowl and to be the champion. Now, on our show, at the end of the show, the last 10 minutes, we have a segment called Penny for Your Thoughts, and this is when Coach 24 does a penny for your thoughts. And so who is your penny for your thoughts?
We're going to stay right here locally in Kansas City, and we're going to pay tribute and homage to the great Lynn Dawson. And most people, especially in today's high-profile NFL, where you look at statistical data, you'll go and look at Lynn Dawson's number, and you really won't see where his true legacy lies within the annals of pro football. But when you look at Lynn Dawson, he brought validity to the AFC. He was one of those people, Joe Namath, were able to bring a legitimacy to the AFL when they were going up against the Shield. They were going up against the NFL. Obviously, he led the Chiefs to 2 Super Bowls, winning Super Bowl IV over the Vikings. But his consistency, not only at what he brought to the table as a quarterback, but what he brought to this city as a human being, in the broadcast booth, everything that he did. When you talk about one of the great class individuals of the NFL and of this city and of our United States of America, Mr. Lenny Dawson was that. And so certainly we are saddened at his passing last week. And I know that today was one of the tributes that they were going to do at the Hall of Fame out at Arrowhead. I know I want to give that shout out to Jihad or whatever. It'd still be Arrowhead, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Always will.
Absolutely. It's like the guy says in Coming to America, he clay to me. So
Absolutely.
Anyway, it'll always be Arrowhead. And so with that, we just want to pay homage to one of the great connectors of our game, one of the guys who made the great transition from on the field to off the field, and who brought something to a community that it sorely needed, and that was somebody that they could look up to. Because prior to the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl in 4, what was Kansas City really known for other than the jazz and the barbecue? But it made Kansas City a real player when it comes to sports.
Yep.
And so Lenny Dawson was the leader of that before our Royals became the Royals of the 70s and 80s. And, years ago when they had basketball here, when the Kings were here. But from a pro sports town, I think it's tied directly to the success of Lenny Dawson. And so to that, we take our hat off to Lenny Dawson.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember Lenny Dawson, and I got to meet him once. And my first football game in 1974, Len Dawson was, he was still the quarterback, and they played the Oakland Raiders. Mm-hmm. And it was a close game. I think it was like 13-10 game. And it was a tremendous game, but you are absolutely right. Kansas City was really stagecoach and horses, and he brought winning to Kansas City because we had the Kansas City A's, and then Finley took them away, and then you brought, and even though Ewing Kauffman brought in the Royals, they still wasn't, big name. It wasn't until the Chiefs came along and Lamar Hunt and Lynn Dawson and that vaunted defense, and people don't realize that is probably one of the top 5 defenses in Super Bowl history. That was a tremendous defense, but they all say that it was Lynn Dawson. Lynn Dawson was the leader. He was Lenny the Cool. He had issues going into the Super Bowl. He had a alleged gambling issue, which wasn't even true, along with a few other players. And then they found out that it wasn't, and all the charges were dropped and everything. But he had to go through that and go through the fact that they were a 13-point underdog, and Minnesota had the Purple People Eater, which was one of the best defenses of all time too. But you had a coach, an innovative coach, who believed in Lynn Dawson when he was in college, which definitely helps. And, whether it's in 1960s or 2020, if you have a college coach and it transmits into the NFL, just like Doug Williams. We have Doug Williams, and Doug Williams was, I didn't know that until we started talking for your birthday, which he had his birthday this week. So happy birthday again. And we were talking that Doug Williams, the one guy that had Doug Williams back in Tampa Bay was Coach Joe Gibbs. And he is a Hall of Fame coach for the Washington Redskins. It's now the Washington Commanders, but at that time it was the Washington Redskins. And he had complete faith in him, and Doug Williams trusted him enough. So when he came to Washington, became the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. So, and I've got a lot of jerseys, and so I wanted to do this show with an honor. Yes, Lynn Dawson. I did not have my jerseys, so if I had a jersey, I probably would have worn Lynn Dawson. But Doug Williams is a guy that typifies the NFL. And a complete underdog. Nobody really gave him a chance. Even in Tampa Bay, they didn't really give him a chance. And then Joe Gibbs gave him that opportunity, and he took full advantage of it. So we had ourselves a great show. Now, real quick, we've got a couple of minutes left. Right now, we're dealing with somebody that's on the end of their career, and that is Serena Williams. Right now, she's made it through 2 rounds of the U.S. Open, and Tiger Woods has actually been out there supporting her and watching her. And she said that the U.S. Open is pretty much going to be her last event. How much of a chance does she have at winning?
I'm going to give her maybe about a 50% chance of winning. There was a time when I would have been no doubt in my mind, but the more rounds that there are, the more difficult it is. It's the same way with Tiger. Tiger can play well for 2 rounds, but it's hard for him to play well for 4 rounds at 40. But it would be like Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters in '86, certainly Tiger winning the Masters back in 2019. And so if she could pull this off, I think it would be a great cap to a career. Where for me she's the greatest tennis player that ever was.
Yes, absolutely. And with that, we are at the end of Any Given Sunday. Coach 24, Darwin Penny. I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice with George Walker. Be awesome, not angry, and we will be back next Thursday at 6 o'clock. So come listen to us, and you guys have yourself a great evening.